Hello, everyone. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching today. We have another great real person chat. Today, I'm talking with Laura Maione. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
How's all by you?
It's all good. Summer in Chicago is great.
Yes, the best part of the year in Chicago, no?
100%, yes.
So I was there once a couple of years ago in June. It was absolutely lovely. It was like 70 degrees, no humidity or anything. Walked around. It was sunny out. Went to Navy Pier, I think it was. Met some friends there.
Sure.
They said very different scenario when you come back in like February or something. So
a little different, yeah.
yeah. Well, great. Thank you for taking the time to come on. Before we get rolling, I just wanted to let you know that the one thing I can't deal with is a deck of cards glued together. Right.
Okay.
It makes it hard to do that. But I had a happy childhood. My dad used to put me in tires and roll me down hills. Those were good years. Yeah, that one got you. They weren't Bridgestones. No, they were good years. Yeah, but I'm pumped. All right, enough of the child's play. So, Laura, your name Laura Maione, and you already let us in on you live in Chicago or Chicago area. It sounds like, right? So Illinois, I assume.
Yep.
Right. And how did you find out about this podcast?
So I'm part of the Retirement Planning Education Facebook group.
Okay.
Which I absolutely adore, and I found out about it through there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Age, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? You can give a range if you'd like, but
I'm 61.
61. Okay. And this isn't for my benefits, for those listening that could kind of, put themselves in your shoes, I think. So.
Yeah.
What is your retirement status?
I retired just about 3 years ago, April 1st, 2021. Okay.
Now, when you retired, what did the people you retired from think it was a joke because you retired on April 1st? Or no?
No, they were pretty serious about it.
It was not fooling. Okay.
No.
And what type of work? What were you doing pre-retirement?
So for the last 30 years, I worked for a bank in banking operations.
Okay.
So I was mostly an individual contributor doing financial planning, productivity tracking, a lot of measurement spreadsheets are my life.
Okay. So. And just curious, was it in person or this sort of, I guess it's, most of your career predates COVID, but was there any sort of virtual or travel, or was it largely in person, go to the office every day type thing?
Very little travel, mostly go to the office every day. The last probably 3 or 4 years, I was working from home 2 days a week. Okay. And then COVID hit and I was home for a year before I retired.
Did you go back at all? You retired right from the fully at-home version of work?
Right from the fully at-home. I hadn't seen anyone in a year other than when I had to take my laptop in to get it swapped out. Yeah, it was a very strange time for all of us.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And anyone else in your plans, your financial life, significant others, noteworthy charities, family, friends, etc.?
I mean, I have family that, ultimately at the end of the day would be my heirs. I do have charitable organizations that I work with, but no spouse, no children, just me.
Okay. Do you have any particular financial goals, priorities? I mean, I assume everyone's sort of top line is not run out of money, but beyond that, anything you're really striving for financially with retirement?
No, not particularly. I mean, I want to live a comfortable life. I made a good living while I was working, and I want to continue, living nicely. I do travel. I like to travel a couple of times a year to someplace, but nothing extravagant. I'm not really a big, I don't have a huge bucket list of things to do. I do just want to make sure, because I am single, I need to take care of myself, and I need to make sure that I am the one I fall back on. So,
right.
That's really the big concern.
Okay. Yeah. And we have some more sort of specific questions around care and financing, things like that. But
yeah.
Non-financial, any big goals, dreams, wishes that, as entering your retirement or now going forward that you want to hopefully get out of retirement?
No, just to explore what's out there, what life has to offer, different activities, different, I love learning. So lifelong education is a big thing for me. And just really make sure I'm seeing the world, not necessarily in person, but just exploring the world.
Yeah. Now, with regards to learning, a great goal. I mean, I think everyone should always be a lifetime learner, ideally. But any subjects in particular, or any sort of chance that you take what you learn and kind of parlay that to like an encore career or doing something else using that learning?
Not necessarily from a career standpoint. If it ever came to the point that something I had learned would be valuable to share with other people, I'd certainly be happy to do that and open to either volunteer type of activities or such like that. I do part. So one of the things I'm learning right now is I'm trying to learn Spanish. Because it's a very useful language in the Chicago area. There are a lot of Spanish-speaking folks around here. At my volunteer job, there are quite a number of Spanish-speaking people there that I'd just like to be able to help in a way that I can't when I'm just an old English speaker. So,
Sure.
in addition, there are a lot of places I'd like to travel that people speak Spanish. So that'd be pretty useful to get there if I can manage to do it.
Yeah. And not to get too ahead of things, but you did mention your volunteer job. Can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, so I volunteer a couple times a week at a food pantry out here in the suburbs. That it's an amazing place, Loaves and Fishes, and I load groceries into cars. It sounds really fancy and very challenging, but it's great. I really enjoy it. I love the people there. It is my big social outlet in a lot of ways. And we have fun doing it, and I'm doing, helpful things for the community. So, I've been almost 3 years now that I've been doing that.
Okay.
So yeah, every Tuesday and Thursday morning, there I am.
That's fantastic, and a lot of people benefit from it. And like you said, social connection, it's a big part of your
for sure.
You're around and people you chat with. Yeah, my in-laws retired a handful of years ago. My father-in-law does that once, maybe twice a week. He volunteers at a local food bank where it's in New York City, and basically he helps the people who donate food will drop off like pallets of whatever they're donating that day. He helps take it, sort it, stock it.
Yeah.
They also package bags together for people who come, put together a combination of, here's this food, that food, that food. And really likes it.
I've done a number of different positions at this place, and I've done the stocking the foods and sorting the food and spending the day in the cooler restocking milk and
right.
all the different things. But my primary thing is I'm part of what we call courtesy patrol, and we load groceries into cars.
Cool. And just are you a lifelong Chicago area resident, or did you move there at some point?
So I grew up in Indiana in South Bend, but I went to college here and basically stayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So some kind of general, bigger picture retirement planning questions about you and your journey. When did you really start to get serious about planning for retirement? Whatever that looked like to you, planning for retirement.
Yeah. So I would say probably my late 30s, early 40s. By then I had been at the bank 8 to 10 years. I felt like that was really going to be my career.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to have a boss who was really a mentor and a friend to me, who was very into planning. And he and I would talk a lot just offline about planning for retirement and planning just for the future and such. He had spreadsheets that he had already developed that he shared with me, and that just got me starting to think about all the stuff I didn't know, and so that I had to start figuring out.
Okay. Now you mentioned, just going back, you said you worked at a bank operations. You mentioned the word financial planning. I think I know what that means. That wasn't financial planning in like the individual retail sense. Was it more planning like corporate level for the bank, or? No,
it's operationally. So basically managing the budgets for our operations.
Got it. Okay. So it wasn't financial planning in the sense of like helping people make.
No. It was financial planning internally for our operation.
Got it. Okay. So now you started late 30s, early 40s, getting serious about your retirement planning from a mentor, which is great. I find a lot of times when you work with someone who is knowledgeable and level-headed and can give you like straight shooting guidance about, hey, this is what you got to start doing or start thinking about. Yeah. That's great. So outside of that person who helped kind of spur you into this, what resources did you look at? Where did you go to try to learn about planning for your retirement? Yeah,
so I'm sure like a lot of people, I went online. One of the first places I probably found was the Bogleheads forum and message boards. So much information there. There's another one called earlyretirement.org, I think. A lot of message boards and such. What I really liked was seeing people have conversations about it and seeing what questions other people had that I didn't even know at the time. I didn't even know to ask. Right. So seeing other people ask them was like, oh, I should probably think about that. And then reading the answers. Now, it's the internet. So there's some interesting stuff out there.
Yeah.
But you do it enough and you read enough that, you start to get a sense of things. And then people are very helpful and post links to other websites and other articles that are written by people who have done a lot of research on this. The Michael Kitces and the Wade Fowles and all those guys that have written, volumes of information. So, from there I could really start to branch out and read a bunch of different things. I used a ton of online calculators, FireCalc and IORP and all those. As I said, spreadsheets are my life. I love numbers. And so playing with that stuff was like, oh, that's really cool. What if I change this? Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So a lot of that. And then, ultimately that turned into things like the Facebook groups and Reddit boards and things like that. Very few books. I read a couple. To me, they were harder to get through because they tended to be more academic.
Yes.
And, you start to read and you start nodding off and come back to life. So a lot of message boards.
It's interesting what you said, and I fully agree that the internet, there's so much information out there. It could be like drinking from the fire hose, or you don't know the validity or accuracy of what someone is saying, because any Yahoo with an opinion can go say whatever, right? But like you said, the more you look around, ask the same questions, see different people's responses to it, the big picture slowly starts to form, and you become more educated, and you be able to start to filter out what's noise, what's incorrect, what's just someone with a loud mouth who should probably pipe down, versus, oh no, this is a consistent recurring answer that people seem knowledgeable and, repeatedly giving good information. And so it could be a great tool, but starting from nothing or close to nothing with knowledge and this stuff, it's really daunting and overwhelming to try to figure out where do you even start and how do you synthesize it.
Exactly. And that's why, like, some of the areas like the Bogleheads Forum, there is so much information and so much good quality information, but right at the beginning, very intimidating. Right. First of all, people use acronyms for everything, which, working for a bank, I get it. We have acronyms for everything too. Yeah. But when you don't know what they are, it's, okay, now I have to go look this up, and now I have to go look this up and stuff. So I do a little bit there, and then I just go, read something else that was maybe a little lighter or a little easier. Yeah. But it was most important for me when people explained why they thought what they did, because not everything applies to everybody, right? In fact, very few things apply to everybody. Sure. So, if somebody just says, well, here's the rule, or here's the right way to do it, and then moves on, that's not very helpful. But if somebody said, here's what I think, and here's why this works for me, I'm like, oh, okay, that applies to me, or move on. Yep.
Now I'm curious, did you start, so just stepping back, so what I see in like the Facebook group, I've been moderating it for over 4 years at this point. And I know there's a lot of ultra sharp, like crazy smart people that know their stuff inside and out, but often speak in acronyms and speak pretty technically. Yep. I've seen throughout the years lots of people who say, like, I've been a member of this group for a few years. I was overwhelmed. I just kind of was a fly on the wall trying to soak it up. Eventually, I got more confident and comfortable in understanding and like, oh yeah, I do sort of know this. Then they start asking questions. Even better, they start contributing and answering other people's questions. And so was that sort of, I'm just curious if you followed that progression as well, where you were like overwhelmed and just sitting back and trying to soak it all in, to eventually got to the point where like you are now helping and adding value to others.
For sure. Absolutely. For the first many years, I didn't say a peep on these message boards. Wasn't necessarily fear of looking stupid, although I don't like looking stupid. But it was just, I know I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't actively participate as much as I think a lot of other people do, because I also find that you get somebody that asks a question and then 52 people respond with the same answer. If I see that 10 people have already responded with the same answer, I'm good. I really don't.
What am I adding?
I don't just need to have my post count go up for no reason. So unless I see a question early on in the posting process, I'll usually say, yeah, okay, you're good. You got the information. Right. So, but absolutely, I feel much more comfortable now. If there is something that I feel I can share, for sure to share.
Great. So with that said, and this is kind of a hard question to answer, but how would you rate your knowledge of retirement and sort of investing in tax and all sorts of financial related stuff?
I would say for the most part, fairly good. Certainly, I'm not an expert in all things, but I think from a retirement planning perspective, I know a lot of what I need to know, or at least I know that I need to know something, and I know where there are areas that I'm not as strong in. My investing process has always been very, very simple. I know I don't know enough to go be picking stocks, so I stick in funds, and I'm happy with that. It works for me. I know that I don't want to get anywhere near rental properties and all that thing that a lot of people talk about. Like, nope, not for me. So I move on. Like, but don't ask me questions about it because I really don't understand. Taxes are probably the thing that's my weak point. I know the basics. I understand the concepts of tax brackets and all that sort of thing. In fact, one of my bigger regrets is that I've never done my own taxes. So when I was first starting out, my brother-in-law did it for a living. So he said, sure, give them to me and I'll take care of them. Great. That's awesome. When he eventually stopped doing that, I just sort of migrated to the company that he migrated all of his clients to. And I've tried a couple of times and it got TurboTax and I input everything and then I compared it to their return. I'm like, these are not the same numbers. I don't get it. So I just move on. But that's my goal is I think especially now my tax situation is much simpler.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to start figuring that out for myself. So that's probably my weak area of really understanding a lot of the nitty gritty because the tax code I think is stupid.
It is.
It's ridiculous. I would work with my brother-in-law. He has these volumes and volumes and volumes of the tax code. What the heck? But another conversation.
Unnecessarily complicated, and
for sure.
There are courses out there. If you're interested, we can chat about it offline. But if you are interested in learning more about taxes to the point that you can, comfortably and confidently do your own return, there are programs out there, self-paced kind of online things that I think are really helpful. That's worth doing. If nothing else, you learn a lot from it. But it can. I went through a few of them, and I'm confident saying they can get you to a point where, assuming you don't have really complicated taxes, and it sounds like you don't, if you don't have rental properties, and for a few $100 and a few months worth of time, you can get to a point where I can do my taxes.
Something I'd like to look into. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. We'll chat about that. And I'm not trying to hide anything from anyone, but I just don't want to pitch or plug specific companies or names because I'm not saying this is the best. It's ones I'm familiar with and I used. And anyway. Okay. And just one more thing about spreadsheets, just stuck in the back of my mind. So you're really big into spreadsheets. I'm curious, how far back does your spreadsheet experience go? So the reason why I ask, so I'm 46. I started working out of college in 2000. And the first place I worked had Lotus 123, which I never heard of. Okay. I learned Excel in college. I went to college in the late 90s and learned the Office suite. And I never heard of anything other than Excel for spreadsheets and saw Lotus 123. I was like, what is this? It was so anyway, when did your spreadsheet knowledge and experience start? How far back?
As far back as I learned that they existed.
Okay.
I started with Lotus 123 and I loved Lotus 123. So when they introduced Excel, I'm like, hang on. I'm good with what we have. I learned to embrace Excel as well. But I have had a computer in my house for longer than anyone else I know. When they first, I even had a Radio Shack tandem computer, like a, Tandy, whatever computer. Yeah. I was on Prodigy when Prodigy existed as an online service. I remember people telling me why do you need a computer in your house? That's ridiculous. Nobody's going to, trust me. Now we carry computers in our pockets, right? But I just, I've always been drawn to numbers. Even as a kid, I was sort of a number nerd. But my life is in spreadsheets. My Christmas spreadsheet is impressive.
I'd love to see it.
It covers meal planning and gifts and to-do lists, and it goes back years. So I can, I can track back to what I served on Christmas Eve 8 years ago if I wanted to. Right. But my life is in spreadsheets.
Incredibly powerful. I have a joke with my kids. My kids are now, they're teenagers, but when they were young, and I'd be brushing their teeth and stuff, teach them how to brush their teeth. My sort of half joke, half serious comment to them was a good motto to live by is good teeth, good credit. If you take care of your teeth and take care of your credit, you'll get far in the world. And the third one I'd say is good spreadsheet skills. I wasn't as committed to that, but having worked particularly in finance, you can spreadsheet anything and make it,
Right.
better or more valuable or whatever. So good teeth, good credit. And if you want to throw in a third, good spreadsheet skills are my rules of
Right.
life to live by.
Hey, it's hard to go wrong with that in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So regarding the financial aspects of retirement planning, what's something you wish you would have done or known differently when you were younger, if anything?
Probably start earlier. Start earlier in a couple of ways. One in education, just starting to understand exactly what that meant, and I mean, learning about how compounding makes makes your account balances change, and you start with a little and then all of a sudden it starts doing the upward curves. Like, oh, that's very cool. So to start earlier, just understanding all of that kind of stuff. Start earlier in understanding how much I needed to save in order to retire. I think a lot of people, and I was certainly one of them, because it's drummed into you. Your 401k, you have a company match. Put in at least the company match. And I said, okay, great. I put the company match in, and then I just went on with life.
Yeah.
I started running numbers and things, and that, whatever it was, 3 or 5% is great, and it's a great start, and you absolutely should start with that. But I'm like, that's not going to get me where I want to go. It needs to be significantly more than that. And so again, I started to figure that out and start putting, by the end, I was putting almost 20% away of what I was making in various buckets.
Right.
But I think starting earlier, it gives you choices. You don't have to stop working. Right. My dad still thinks I'm crazy for having retired when I did, but you can keep working as long as you want. But as soon as you start having choices, right now I have the option. If I want to work, I can work. If I don't want to work, I don't have to work.
Yeah. That
just gives you a lot more mental freedom of figuring out how you want to spend, the rest of your life. If I had started earlier with a health savings account, that would have been great. I started way late on that. But I tell young people that are coming out now, so you've got this thing, try to understand what it is, but put something in it, just something in there, and let it grow. Because you will have medical expenses someday.
Inevitable, yeah.
Right. So I think just start earlier is probably what I would have told myself.
Yeah. Now, I like what you said, how it gives you choices starting earlier, building resources gives you choices. And I think my sort of view and framing of retirement, it doesn't mean you have to stop gainful employment. It just means sort of freedom of choice, freedom of time. So I've seen people where they don't necessarily like their job and what they do, but they get to a point where they realize financially, I don't have to do this. Like, I can leave any given day. That change in mindset, they now like their job much better, knowing that it's not the shackle of the 9 to 5. It's like, I'm doing this because I want to do this, and like just completely reframes your perspective. So freedom of choice, freedom of time is what retirement is, and financial resources are one of the things that can help you get there. So well said. All right, same question, but now for non-financial things. Anything that you wish you knew earlier about non-financial aspects of retirement planning?
I don't think so. I actually think I did that part pretty well. Again, one of the things that I read really early on when I was starting to think about this was you can't just retire from something, you have to retire to something. And that's something that had never really crossed my mind. We're all focused on the financial side of things, and rightly so. I mean, if you don't have enough money to retire, game over. So you got to keep on doing something. But starting to think about, what does that mean? I worked 60, 70 hours a week. And that's a lot of time to fill when you don't have that anymore. So years ago, I started a notebook where I on every page, I wrote something I liked to do, whether it was cooking or reading or traveling or football or any of those things. And then underneath that, on each page, I wrote, what might that look like in retirement? So if I like to, I love football, big football nerd. What are the things that I could do with that? And it's fantasy football, and it's, working on predictive analytics and that kind of thing. Or cooking, here are the kinds of things I can do. Travel, here are the places I'd like to go. Education, here are the sources of something that I might look to. And it just gave me comfort in knowing that if I got stuck, I can always look at that notebook and say, here's something I haven't thought about. Now, the funny thing is, in getting ready for this, I tried to find the notebook. It took me a while because I haven't opened it since I retired. But I had it. I had it, so it was my just in case I need to look back on it. The other thing that I try to do is I try to think of something physical, something social, something in mental and intellectual, something productive sometimes. And if I run into a gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do this afternoon, I try to figure out which of those buckets hasn't been replenished lately. And if it's I haven't done something social in a while, I'll pick up the phone and call somebody, or make a plan to go out to dinner with a friend or something like that. Or physical, I go for a walk down by the little lake near my house. And so I just try to keep some of a balance in that kind of thing. So that's helped. So I think I was pretty well prepared. Now I'm only 3 years into it. There
Right.
theoretically could be quite a while left. So we'll see how it keeps going. But so far so good.
Well done. And so it sounds like you're very intentional about it. And I think people have to be. Like, you have to be intentional about maintaining social connection, about physical activity, about just reason to get up and do something. And you did, right? So
Yep.
kudos on that. So I have to ask, what's your football team? Is it the Bears or Colts?
Oh,
or
yeah.
is it some?
No. Oh no. Yeah, Chicago Bears.
Well, I figured since
Big
you're from
fan.
Indiana, maybe, I don't know, like you're a Colts fan, but
Yeah, actually, growing up, the Colts weren't even there then. I think they were still in Baltimore when I was growing up. So
yeah.
no, the Chicago Bear fan.
All right.
Yeah.
I had I don't know why, I mean, I'm from New Jersey, but I had a Bears jacket. I think my father got it from work. Someone gave it to him. So I was like a Bears fan for 2 years when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. And that was actually, that might have been after the year they cleaned up on the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Was that 85 maybe?
Yeah.
So I
January
think
25th, 1986. Yes.
Yep. I remember the refrigerator shuffle.
Yeah. Super Bowl shuffle. Yeah. Refrigerator Perry.
Refrigerator Perry. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is it Jim McMahon?
Yes,
Jim McMahon.
Yeah. We still live in a lot of the glory days because it hasn't been good since. But
Right.
it's the off season. We all have hope.
It's like, I'm not a baseball fan, but it's like the Mets around here. Like, every year is a new reason to hope. And, there's always 1986 when they won the series. And there's always hope. And then, the year gets going and it's just kind of hope peters out. And there's the next year. So.
Exactly.
All right. I'm guessing the answer is no, but do you work with a financial advisor, or did you ever, let's say?
I did. So I did once, right before I retired. I hired a fee-only one-time person just to have somebody else run the numbers for me. I didn't share my spreadsheets with her, but had her run numbers based on what I had given her, just to make sure that I hadn't missed something big. So I did that. I didn't love the output. The first time she ran the numbers, she clearly hadn't listened to me. So had things like my required income wrong. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, a little bit.
And so, she reran them. So it all came out well. I think her assumptions were very optimistic. So it had me end of plan being much farther along than I think I am. But it was good that somebody didn't come up with and say, oh, by the way, you forgot this big chunk of things. So I did have somebody run a plan once. I might do it again at some point in time down the road, just again as a gut check.
Sure. Are you where you are now, so a few years into retirement, compared to your expectations when you did your own sort of modeling and planning and whatever? Are you more or less where you thought you would be? I mean, and the markets obviously impact this, but are you tracking to what you were hoping you would?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the first couple of years out of retirement, I think are the most challenging, just because you're starting to learn how to do all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's now I'm taking money out instead of putting money in, and how does that work? And just the mechanics of it. It's like, I spent 40 years putting money into these accounts that I never touched. Right, not a dollar came out. I'm like, I don't know how to withdraw money from my brokerage account. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
And so just kind of figuring that piece out was a little bit intimidating. And now I don't have withholding, so I have to figure out this estimated tax thing that's out there. So it's a little bumpy. But yeah, from a projection standpoint, I'm right exactly, I think, where I thought I'd be.
Okay, great.
So far.
All right, some more in the weeds questions about your sort of tactical, actual planning and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So you retired before 65. You're not yet 65. Yep. What are you doing for healthcare insurance? So
I was very lucky. The bank I worked for when I started had great benefits. One of which being retiree medical. So I continue on the same plan I had when I was working. I pay more for it. They don't subsidize it as much as they did, but they subsidize a certain percent for every year you work there. And so after 28 years, it was a pretty good deal. So
great.
I have that. And then once I turn 65, that turns into a Medigap plan. So they'll have a supplementary insurance on top of Medicare. So very lucky that I had that. It has changed for newer employees, and I was worried that it would change for me too. So as I was going through, especially the last couple of years, like, well, if this goes away, what are you going to do? So I tried to educate myself on the Affordable Care Act options and what was out there, so that if I had to jump, I knew what I would be jumping into. But fortunately, I didn't have to.
Okay, great. And when you turn 65 and start Medicare, does the Medigap they provide, is that fully paid for or just subsidized? You still have to pay for some of it?
It's subsidized, and I forget what the exact percentage, but a decent percentage of a subsidy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And again, it was based on percentage, number of years worked. So because I worked there longer, it turned into it. That was a real benefit.
Great. Yeah, my mom retired from Verizon. I mean, it was multiple iterations of companies along the way.
Right.
She started AT&T, I think, out in San Francisco, and then moved over here. It was Bell Atlantic. It was Verizon. It was New Jersey Bell. It's Verizon when she retired. I think it was something else. But one point is, she was a union worker. It was the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers, I think.
Okay.
Electrician, whatever. So she wasn't out like doing electrical work, but it was a union job. She did mostly like drafting. Sure. So like when new developments would get built, she'd draw the plans for where the people would go to run the phone wires. And so it was a union job. And so she has basically union benefits. And one of the benefits was retirees get healthcare for life. So she signed up for Medicare. Basically, Verizon covers the rest. She pays virtually next to nothing for anything, which is amazing. Yeah, and even she's like, always fingers crossed. Like, let's hope they keep this, because it's still contract basis. Like every few years, the union gets a new contract, right. And in theory, they could cut or dramatically reduce these.
Right.
So she's always like, what if? But so far, she's in her 70s and still, basically free healthcare. Completely subsidized almost.
Yeah, that's great. I know when I would talk to young employees when they'd come into the bank, and everyone complains about their salary, right? I don't think anybody's ever happy with their salary, but like, you have to look at this total benefit thing, because there is something there. I mean, we actually had a pension at one point, and it was really hard for people, I think, to look at those as being ultimate benefits. But I mean, honestly, between for all the benefits I had, that's why I could retire at 58, is because I had those benefits that I'd worked for.
Do you have a pension, or did you, and it got cashed out, or how did that work?
So they froze our pension, 10 or so years before I retired. But what we had accumulated already stayed there and grew with interest. They just didn't keep contributing to it. So when I retired, I took a lump sum that I rolled into my IRA. Yeah.
Okay. What's your thoughts and strategy for eventually claiming Social Security? So you're not 62 yet, so you can't, but what do you?
Yeah, I turned 62 in August, but my plan is to wait until I'm 70. It just seems to make the most sense to me. I look at Social Security as security, as sort of my longevity insurance, if you will. Right. Because, even if I got an annuity now, annuities don't usually have cost of living increases put in them, right? Yeah. So again, because I keep looking back and saying, I am my fallback. I'm the only one that I can make sure that I'm going to live until end of plan, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. I figure might as well. Now, I can always change my mind. If in a couple of years, my full retirement age is 67. So if in a couple of years, it makes sense for me to take it early, I can, but right now the plan is to wait and have it be as big a benefit as it can, just in case.
Yeah. Now, I'm just curious, I'm sure other people listening have this question. So you said plan to delay till 70, which I agree on the surface is probably the right answer, assuming you have at least average life expectancy, right, or more. But you said along the way, something may change where you want to or need to start it earlier. Not to put words in your mouth. I forget exactly what you said, but like what would those scenarios be, you think?
Probably a health issue, right? Okay. If something happened with my health because right now my plan goes to 100 because I don't know, right? I know average life expectancy is 80 something. And averages make me extremely nervous.
Right.
Because they sound good and they're a great, place to start. But, if everyone planned to, I think my life expectancy now would be to 84 based on my age. So if I planned to 84 and said, okay, I'm done,
Right.
at 85, I'm eating cat food, right? Because that's just not going to work. In my family, 3 of my grandparents lived into their 90s. My dad is still alive and doing great. So as a just in case, I'm planning to 100. So if something were to happen that with my health that said, chances of doing that are not very good, I might take Social Security earlier.
Okay.
If something happened with the markets, I mean, it would have to be fairly catastrophic, but that might affect my plans. I put it out there because I want to kind of convince myself that you can always change your mind. It's okay.
Yes.
Even though right now, all of the reasons seem to indicate 70 is the best age. Life changes, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if anyone else knows what's going to happen, please let me know, because it'd be great. It would make planning a lot easier.
It'd be super helpful. Yes, definitely would.
Right?
And that's exactly it. You have to have let's call it plan of record, which is sort of your base case on, the best assumptions and educated guesses you can make for yourself now, but realize that will change. Whether life reasons, life circumstances change, financial markets change, tax legislation changes, whatever, right? You have to have the flexibility and agility, but you can't get around having at least a base case starting plan to work off of, because otherwise you're kind of just flying completely blind, making choices.
And to me, it's kind of a guideline. And as you said, it's built on all sorts of assumptions. I don't know what interest rates are going to do. I don't know what inflation's going to do. I don't know what the market's going to do. External things. I don't know internally what's going to happen with me. I've looked. I don't see an expiration date anywhere, so I don't know what it is. But based on all of this, and so then I think if you understand all that, when any of those changes, so now inflation goes way up or inflation goes way down, it's like, okay, so now I know how that might impact my plan. The plan changes.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Definitely. Pretty specific question, but it's a hot topic and has been for years. Roth conversions. What's your strategy around them? Are you doing them or you're not? What's your thoughts in general about it for you?
Yeah. So one of the things that I don't know if I would have changed, because I'm not sure how that would have worked, but when I retired, probably 75% of my assets were in a tax deferred situation. So like my pension lump sum rolled into my IRA, my 401k rolled into my IRA, and then I had a fairly small brokerage account because as I was saving, everything went in my 401k, like dump. So balance wise, my tax deferred is much higher than whatever you call that, not tax deferred accounts. So I have done a few fairly small Roth conversions. I'm doing a fairly sizable one this year. One of the things I use is the new retirement software, which I love. And so I play around with different scenarios, and they've got a part in there where they can recommend different Roth conversions and such. Right now I'm planning to do a fairly sizable one this year, maybe another one next year, and then probably just go with, and the rest is what it is.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I play with fairly regularly to say, well, what if I changed this or what if I changed that, to see kind of what the implications would be. But I would have liked to have had more, Roth IRAs didn't come out until I was well past the income level to be able to contribute directly. So conversions is basically the only way I get money in there.
Yeah. Now, I want to just go back. You said that revisit, you rolled your pension lump sum into your IRA and your 401k. Lots of people have the question, should I take the lump sum? Should I take the annuity of the pension? And separately ask the question, should I roll over my 401k to my IRA or not? And there's lots of reasons why it could or couldn't make sense, and everyone's answer is different. So I'm not saying what you're about to say is what people should or shouldn't do. I'm just curious for you, what were your decision-making points around A, taking the pension as a lump sum as opposed to monthly payments, and B, rolling your 401k to an IRA instead of leaving it?
Yeah. So the 401k was fairly easy for me because I wanted to simplify things. When I was working, I had a number of accounts that I had to keep track of because several were held at the bank, and we had an employee stock purchase plan, and we had the 401ks, and and then I had my personal things that were, and I wanted to simplify it. I don't want to track all these different accounts. So that was easy for me. I rolled it into my IRA. The pension was a little harder. Mostly I came to the decision because, again, if I'm planning to 100, that's another, at the time, 42 years, there's no cost of living increase on that annuity that I would get. So, by the time I'm 85 or 90, the annual amount that I would have gotten would not have had decent purchasing power, really. So it was a little bit of I'm crossing my fingers and hope I made the right decision, because we won't know for another 40 years whether that was the right decision
right.
or not, or the best decision, I should say. I don't think there's a wrong decision, but it just made sense for me. And then again, I just have it all together, and I can just manage it in one place to make it easier for myself.
Right. Yeah,
That's
a great point. Yeah. You won't know until after the fact. At that point, it's too late. What was the best decision in hindsight?
Of course.
Right. Lump sum could be better. Taking the annuity, the pension could be better. Really don't know. There's lots of different flavors and factors of why one may be better for someone versus the other. So.
Yeah. Okay. And, if it happens that my life expectancy or my lifespan is cut short for some reason, I won't care because I won't be here. So.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I say about Social Security as well. Like people, especially if there's no potential spousal survivor benefit to kick in, someone's delaying till 70, and they're like, well, what happens if I die at 68 and I get nothing? I'm like, yeah, that's right. But do you care? You're gone, Right. So, all right. Do you own a home?
I do.
Okay. Is it paid off?
It is not. I flouted the rule that says you have to pay your mortgage off before you retire. I've got another 3 years on it, on the last 15-year mortgage that I took. And the rate is really low, especially compared to what you could get today. I thought about it. I mean, it'd be nice not to have to write that check every month. But for another 3 years, I'm keeping it.
You're probably paying sub 3%, I guess, if your mortgage total.
It's right around 3%.
Yeah. So right that's dirt cheap by today's standards. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's not all, for those listening who haven't sort of heard this before, like whether or not you should or shouldn't pay for mortgage going into retirement and retirement is a very personal decision. Mm-hmm. There is a dollars and cents black and white analysis you can try to do. Like in the case of you, Laura, your mortgage is, let's say, 3% per year interest you're paying. If you can get 4+, 5+% interest guaranteed currently in a savings account or like a treasury bill, why would you take money from there, forego getting 4 or 5% to pay down something that's only costing you 3%?
Exactly.
Right. But flip side is some people just mentally and emotionally don't want the debt hanging over them, period, for whatever the reasons are. And there's no wrong reasons. So for them, the right answer may be pay the mortgage off. Right. So it's an interesting question.
And honestly, if I had 30 years left on it, then I might have paid it off, just because that's a long time to be carrying that. At the time, it was 5 years left. It's fine.
Yeah.
Plus, it was all part of my cash flow that I was so used to that it doesn't hurt as much.
Right. Do you plan on staying in the house, moving, downsizing, anything like that?
At some point in time, I'd move. I thought I would have moved by now. My kind of original thought was to have downsized before now. I haven't done it, partly because I have a lot of stuff, and it's really hard to get rid of a lot of stuff. So I'm slowly working through that. But part of it is I really like my house, and I like having space for when family comes to visit and they can stay here. My one sister downsized, and she's in a small apartment downtown and loves it. Mm-hmm. I'm happy where I am for the moment, so I don't feel the need to. I will eventually. There are a lot of stairs in this house, and I know I'm not going to want to deal with stairs the rest of my life, probably.
Yeah.
But again, looking at now, so downsize to what, right? Is it an active adult community? Is it an apartment? Is it a smaller house? Is it, I have options, and I'm not in any hurry to deal with them. Yeah. So eventually, I'm sure by the time I'm, in the next 10, 12, 15 years, I will probably have done something.
And I know this wasn't one of the specific questions ahead of time, but since we're sort of on the topic with like aging in place in the house, and you said yourself a lot of stairs, so may not be conducive to staying there. Do you have plans or thoughts around long-term care or extended care assistance and how that would look both from a financial perspective? How does that play into your plan, and even just sort of the logistics of who would help with the assistance if and when needed?
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest challenge, I think, for a single person in planning, is that you don't have the built-in kids that you assume are going to take care of you or whatever. So I'm still working through that piece of it. The financial side, I think, is a lot easier because if I go into care, I don't need a house. So there's all the equity I have in my house, and it's a fairly considerable amount, should pay for whatever care that I need. So I don't have long-term care insurance or things like that, because by the time I looked at that sort of thing, it was after the industry had said, "Oh, yeah, we can't do these policies anymore." And it financially just didn't make sense for me. And again, I don't need to worry about a spouse or a partner needing to stay in the house if I went into some other kind of thing. It's, if I don't need the house, that's right, what's going to pay for everything else. So financially, I think I'm pretty comfortable. The people side of things is I'm trying to figure what that looks like. It's whether I've got friends, I've got sisters, and that can then I'm sure would be happy to help with stuff like that. But I also don't want to be a burden on people,
right?
And expect somebody else to deal with it. Because one of the things, again, about being single is I've taken care of myself my whole life. That's what I do. So, one of the more challenging things to think about for the future.
And it is hard in that there's not an easy or obvious answer to it. So, different people will have different life circumstances and scenarios that may lead to different answers. But okay. This next one can go a lot of ways, and I probably should have broke it down into multiple sort of sub questions. But just regarding investments and investable assets, what's your process and view about how you're taking money out? Distribution strategy. How do you have it invested, et cetera? However you want to take this question is fine by me.
Okay. So I think I mentioned before, my investing plan, if you will, is very simple. I'm index fund person from way back. And I do, my asset allocation is I'm a fairly aggressive investor. Before I retired, I think I was 100% in equities. I have since backed off a little bit.
95 now.
Maybe a little less than that, but not much. I have always been an aggressive growth person. And that's one of the things that I think I've learned the most in the last 3 years is about kind of all of that and how that works and which accounts you should have which vehicles in and all that kind of thing. So I'm withdrawing mostly from my brokerage account right now. And I've got probably another year or so of that if I'm solely using that. And then, it'll come out of my IRA and I'll sell whatever. I'll try to keep myself as in the asset allocation that I'm comfortable with. And so, selling the stock fund if I need to, or selling my fixed income is mostly in CDs and such right now, and treasuries. So, they keep rolling over into different things. So that is sort of the income that I can pull out when I need to.
So what you said,
that's much more play by ear.
Yeah. And even I think with most advisors as well, it's also sort of like see what makes the most sense to sell or liquidate any given time to free up the cash as needed.
Yeah.
So you said you're taking money out of your brokerage account for now. Is that already in cash or cash-like things because you're taking it out? Or is it still a mix of investments, including stocks? And you just sort of pick what to sell? It is. Yeah,
most of it is in investments. I do have a cash, an amount of cash, but it's that's right now mostly in my IRA. But some of that is what I'm doing with the Roth conversions. I'm moving it into the Roth and then kind of figuring that out.
Got it. Okay. Now, since you're already in retirement, this next block of questions applies to you. It doesn't really apply to those still working, but how did you find the transition emotionally going from the accumulation stage of saving money, put money into your accounts to now decumulating, taking money out?
It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Because I read about people like freaking out and I can't spend money. And I'm like, oh.
Right.
But again, one of my goals is to maintain the lifestyle that I have. So that costs money.
Yeah.
Again, for me, it was the challenging part was the logistics of it. Just trying to figure out: do I move it from my brokerage account to my checking account? Do I, how much do you leave in your checking account? How much do you leave in different places? So, as I said, one of the first things I did was I took all of the accounts and I consolidated them. They're all in one place right now, so I can see them better and I can manipulate them a little bit better. But the mental challenge of switching over into the decumulation, I'm probably more conservative than I need to be. I mean, the numbers tell me I could probably spend more money than I am, but I want to give it a few years and just test the waters and make sure nothing goes, bump in the night. I think the harder part should have been, the personal side of retiring. I worked a lot of hours and had a lot of friends at work that I enjoyed spending time with. The reality is the pandemic changed all that anyway, right? I mean, I literally had spent a year in my house seeing nobody and doing Zoom calls and team meetings and that kind of thing isn't the same thing. No hanging out by the desks and talking football after every game and all that kind of stuff. So I realized like I've already sort of half retired from that aspect anyway, so might as well just kick off the rest.
That's a great point. I didn't really think about that, but it sounds completely true, right? Like if you were forced into not being around people because of a pandemic, you already sort of got used to how to deal with that day to day.
Right.
So
right.
Interesting.
And I'm a homebody. Like I like being at home. Like a lot of people stressed about being stuck at home. I'm like, I'm happy. I'm in my happy place now. This is good. Yeah. So it wasn't hard. It just, you do miss, and I still keep in touch with several of them, but most of them are still working. And so, can only do so much.
Right. Are there any expenses that ended up being more in retirement than you planned for or thought they would be?
I don't think so. I was looking the other day and I'm pretty consistent. House expenses are a little more, but that's only because I put off doing a lot of things at home that I just didn't have time to deal with. And now I have time. And so I was like, okay, so got to fix that and got to do that. And, but it's, I expected that. So I don't think that was unexpected, but it's been pretty consistent with what I had before.
Okay. And flip side of that question, any expenses that ended up being less than you planned for, or more or less you spot on?
Pretty much. The taxes, I think, are the big thing. Not, income taxes or federal and state income tax are about the same because I'm spending about the same kind of money. Yeah. But you sort of forget that Medicare taxes go away and Social Security taxes go away. So, that was a sizable chunk that, that's kind of cool. Plus you're not putting the 20% of my income into those savings vehicles. So there's a little bit of that. But again, I think overall, like I've categorized my expenses through Quicken or something like that for, 20 years. So I'm very comfortable with knowing where my money went. And when you look across those categories, it's fairly consistent.
That's a great point about Social Security and Medicare taxes going away. That all else equal, you go into retirement, you stop having wages or self-employment income, your total tax burden drops by what's like 7.5% roughly as the employee. Right. If you're the employer, if you're self-employed, it's double that. So that's non-trivial. Now, it's not necessarily enough to say like, oh yeah, taxes are cheap in retirement, but that is one expense that just flat out goes away. So And because I was playing around with different things, there was one year, it was last year, the year before, that I took all of my income for the year out of my brokerage account, and I didn't do any Roth conversions. So my tax burden at the end of the year was almost nothing. There was a little bit of capital gains from my brokerage account, and I went from paying fairly significant taxes as a working person to, because I want to kind of sort of reset the baseline and say, okay, we're starting from here. And that was kind of wild to see when I filed my taxes, like, oh, I don't have to pay any money. Right. And what's nice about Illinois is retirement income isn't taxed. Right. So IRA distributions, 401k distributions, right? So that, that's all else equal. Again, less income tax than you were paying when you were employed. So
for sure.
Cool. It's interesting how different states have different tax rules. I'm just kind of sidebar here, but it makes it frustrating to plan, especially if like you do taxes for people.
Right.
Some states like Illinois, Pennsylvania flat out don't tax retirement income at all, be it pensions, IRAs, 401ks. Other states have some exclusions, like 20 grand is excluded. New Jersey has this thing where if your total income is below a certain level, all of your income is excluded as a retiree. I think you have to be over 60 or 62. Ooh.
Wow.
So like for people who are interested in moving potentially to a different state, like I'm not saying you should choose primarily based on the state income tax situation, but there's some real savings.
It could be a factor,
to be had. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Now, obviously, some states are no income tax, Florida, Texas, whatever, Nevada, right. There's a handful, but so yeah, people often gripe about the high tax states, Illinois being one of them, but it's not terrible for a retiree.
Right. It
purely from an income tax perspective. Yeah, it definitely helps. Okay. What did you think would be more difficult or challenging about retirement than it actually is, if anything?
I think because I'd heard sort of the stories from other people, I thought it might be harder to figure out how to spend my time, right? To not fall into I'm just going to sit in front of the TV for 12 hours a day and do nothing. Or that I would feel bored, or I would feel lonely, or any of that. And that hasn't turned out to be the case. Again, I've got that little notebook if I ever need to fall back on it. Right. But for the most part, I easily spend my days doing what I want to do, and I'm very content. Really just happy.
That's what it's all about, right? Just being happy, whatever it is that equals happy for you. That's a great goal,
right? Yeah. Right, to keep it happy. When I first retired, so again, I retired in April, and I decided to do nothing for the first couple of months and just live and enjoy and don't schedule things. I knew people who went right from working to literally scheduling 8 hours a day of some activity every day of the week. Like, then keep working. I mean, if you're going to schedule yourself, get paid for it. I don't know. So I did not. I enjoyed the summer. I went to all the little fairs and festivals on the weekends and did that. And then by about August, I said, okay, now it's time to get back into some routine. So that's when I started volunteering and doing a couple of other things. But it was kind of nice to just have that time to just be and not worry about having to do anything.
Right.
And then you just sort of pick things up if I ever feel like I'm bored or don't really know what to do. You look around and I've got a bazillion things around the house I could do, both necessary in terms of starting to get rid of all the clutter and all that kind of things. Or, there's a crossword puzzle magazine sitting there that I can just pick up and do, or a book that I've been meaning to read, or, or my Spanish, I pick up and do another couple Spanish lessons. Mm-hmm. So it's just, you need to find it within yourself to figure it out.
Yeah, that's something I'm worrying about for myself. I'm still a long ways away from retiring in the traditional sense, but I know I struggle to sit still, like physically sit still, and I'm always going to, that's why I have a hard time reading. I probably have undiagnosed ADD, I think, but I need to be out doing something. Plenty of time to worry about that, but I'm well aware that that's something that needs to get figured out ahead of time. What's some of the worst or most inaccurate advice you were given about retirement?
I think anything with you have to. Either you have to, or always, or never. Any of those absolutes. You have to pay off your mortgage before you retire. You have to spend less than 4% per year on your retirement accounts. You have to save $1 million. You have to save $5 million. You never use a financial advisor. Never pay somebody to manage your investments. Never buy an annuity. God forbid, never buy an annuity. All of those things, when you look behind them, now a lot of those I agree with in my particular situation, and some of which obviously I don't. But any of the, again, when people would put that out there, and sometimes it's, paid advisors putting things like that out there of here's the rules that you have to follow. Right. I don't believe there are rules. I think every situation is going to be different. I don't, there's probably another 61-year-old single child-free woman out there that's in a fairly similar situation to me and is going to make completely different decisions because they have a different risk tolerance, or they have a different goal or a different priority or such. So I think they're very dangerous when you're just starting to learn, because they sound like, okay, here's a
Yes.
rule. I'm going to write that rule down and I'm going to follow that rule. And if you just stop there, I think people can make a lot of not right for them decisions. So I learned pretty early on to be very wary when somebody says always or never, because I don't think that's probably the case.
That is excellent advice. Yeah. Dogmatic, black and white. Definitely do this. Definitely don't do that. And even those rules of thumb, how much money you need saved to retire by certain, like, just throw it out. They all start with some element of well-grounded approach, but then they just speak to the extremes, or, put everyone to the same bucket, and just, no, it's not everyone fits this or has different wants or needs. And
right. And most of them, I think, come from a good place, right? The 4% rule is there's a lot of, good information behind it, but understand what the information is. Like right now, I'm taking more than 4%, right? Once I start Social Security, whole different story, right? So you try to figure all that out. Now, I'm not, living on 15 or 20%. I think that would be a little silly. But, you sort of look at that and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm over that number. Like, no, wait a minute. You've planned this. You figured it out. That makes sense for a couple of years, and then, life is going to change or whatever.
Exactly.
I also think when people look at, these, again, rules or guidelines or whatever you want to call them, most humans, I think, are going to make changes if they need to make changes, right? It can't be, I'm going to do this exact same thing for the next 38 years and then I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. I doubt that, right? If the markets go way down, people are going to make changes. I'm going to stop doing certain things that I like to do, or I'm going to, if the market goes way up, I might do more things and be able to spend more money, but I think you have to keep flexibility in all of that kind of stuff, and just understand what's going on with yourself, with the world, and adapt.
Yeah,
we do that pretty well.
I don't think there's anyone out there who wouldn't adapt along the way, even those that set the most like rigid, chiseled in stone plan to say, right, this is what's going to happen. Like, life's going to happen. And you're going to realize, okay, time to be agile.
Yeah.
What was the most surprising, if anything, thing about retiring, both financial and then non-financial?
So the financial, I haven't been surprised yet. So Good. We'll see. Again, just 3 years in, so who knows? I think the most surprising non-financial thing is how much I enjoy going grocery shopping on a Tuesday.
Okay.
I mean, it's the stupid little pleasures, but being able to go and do errands when nobody else is doing them is amazing. It's stress-free. I joined Costco, and I went in after I retired because I hadn't done it because, you hear the things about, well, you're going to get a 10-gallon jug of mayonnaise. Probably don't need that. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see. And I went in and I went to sign up. And the woman asked if I'd ever been a member of Costco before. I said, I've never set foot in a Costco. And she said, how is that possible? Because I'm not coming here on a Saturday. It's crazy. Yeah. And so now I go to Costco on a Thursday, and it's awesome.
It's a pleasurable experience, right?
It really is. And I can, I don't have to park a mile and a half away. I can go through and the lines aren't crazy long, and I just can go, oh, this is kind of fun. So it's really that. And most weekends, I pretty much stay home because I don't want to be out there with everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
So that was probably the biggest non-financial surprise.
Okay. Yeah, my schedule and my day job is super flexible, and I often do the errands during middle of the day on the weekday. Prior life was typical corporate life, get home 7:00 every night, have to do things nights and weekends. And now it's just such a different experience. Getting a haircut, even I can go see my guy whenever on a random Tuesday or Thursday, as opposed to having to fighting
with everyone else for the Saturday appointments. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Wrapping up, if you can give only one piece of advice or guidance to others about retirement planning, what would it be?
I think I mentioned this before, but start early. Start early thinking about it. Start early learning. Learn about yourself, right? What is your risk tolerance? I'm lucky enough, I've had the same best friend since kindergarten. We still live close together. We have breakfast every Saturday. We talk about everything in the world. I like to talk about finances and planning and stuff like that. She doesn't like to do that kind of research as much herself. So we talk about those kinds of things. But I also learned pretty early on, we have very different risk tolerances. Mm-hmm. Like I am fine. I'm very aggressive. When the markets go down, I look at it and go, well, that's disappointing. And you just wait and wait for she's not at all comfortable with that. If the markets go down, she starts to, get much more concerned. So she's in a much more conservative allocation. And I, at one point in time, would try to not convince her to do something different, but I always thought that was wrong. Like, it's not the right way to go about planning. And I was like, you know what? It's right for her. She's perfectly fine and perfectly happy doing that kind of thing. So know yourself, know what it is that you want, try to figure out what your priorities are, understanding that can change. But start early to just try to think through, what the next phase of your life might look like and what you need to do to get there.
Great. Well said. And I have to say I agree with you on that. So thank you.
There you go.
So Laura, this was great. Thank you for your time and for sharing. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you everyone for listening. As always, take care and we'll see you next time.